Hi, I'm Monica Olson.
And I'm Jennifer Welch.
And you're listening to the Biophilic Solutions Podcast, where every other week we sit down with experts and thought leaders in order to explore the innate connection between humans and nature and why we need nature to thrive.
We truly believe that reconnecting with the natural world and understanding our place within nature is a key to tackling the global environmental problems we face today.
So let's get to today's episode. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, Monica.
How are you?
I'm great. It's summer. I'm great. I'm really great.
I know you're back in the tent, right?
I am back in the tent, and it feels so good to be so close to the ocean. Morning swims. How are you doing at Serenbe?
Oh, it's delightful. The weather's been incredible. It's sort of that in between spring and summer, not quite too hot, glorious. But in honor of summer, we have our Biophilic summer reading list for you guys.
Yes, we do.
Jen and I have each picked out 3 books, and we just want to share them with you. Easy reads for the pool or the beach to learn fun things about the natural world.
Absolutely. And there's so many great books out there that I love hearing about your collection and your selection every time we do this. I know you get that Hamlet, Hills and Hamlet. Is that it? I always forget the name of the bookshop. Yeah.
Yeah. Hills and Hamlets. Mm-hmm.
Hills and Hamlet. And I love
our favorite bookstore.
It's so cute. So do you want me to start?
Yeah. You kick it off, Jen. What's your first summer book pick?
I'm going to kick off because it's a friend of ours in the nature space, our dear friend Nadina Gali. So she just came out with The Nature of Our Cities. And she has been really, really doing such a great job telling the backstories of why she did the book, and has some great guests that she's interviewed along the way that kind of helped set up the book. I know that we just had her on the podcast not so long ago. Was that just maybe a month or so ago? And she's just delightful. And I just love, she's so young. She just had a baby, and she's just so effervescent and so passionate about the nature of our cities. And the whole book is really talking about and leveraging technology and AI versus saying, okay, nature should be separate. Nature is nature. But how do we really leverage the power of nature and blend it with technology in urban environments, in cities? And how do we create a very supportive ecosystem that blends both technology as well as nature? And I love her book. I love the work that she does. But yeah, integrating nature into urban environments are some things that people are just starting to really open their eyes up to now. And Anita's book does a really good job of describing how and why it's important. And especially this awareness of, wow, we never thought about how important nature is in our cities until we start reading books like hers. And it's powerful. So I'm really proud of her for writing this book. I think she's a doll and really sweet. And she's a great supporter of others as well, which I love. She's really always using her platform to share good stories, interesting stories, and other people's work. So I really appreciate her. And I really like this book a lot. Easy read and very, very cool too.
Yeah, great examples of fun technology that's happening. And we'll also put a link to that podcast. So if you want to dive into the podcast, hear a little bit more about her work, but definitely go order that book. I'm going to give you another one that kind of is similar, not so much technology, but it's about how important nature is to our lives, which we know is sort of the overarching theme of the podcast, but it's called Life as We Know It. Can Be. And the can be is in quotes, and it's called Stories of People, Climate, and Hope in a Changing World. And it was just published this April. It's by Bill Weir, who is CNN's chief climate correspondent and the host of a TV show that you can watch called The Wonder List. And so, Bill, what I really like about this is it kind of started out with when his son was born in April 2020. He was sort of oh my God, this child is being born into this kind of crazy world, right? Beyond the pandemic, but just everything that's happening with climate. And so as he had spent, multiple decades telling stories of really cool places and cultures and creatures, but they were also talking about sort of the wonder of change that's happening, right? And so he's really immersed in all the warnings and the good and the bad that's happening, right? On the front lines of everything. And he's been really covering it. So he wanted to sort of distill those experiences into what he were Earth Day letters to his son. And he was going to, I think he's writing them every year. And then like, he wants his son to read them in 2050. And his sort of philosophy was sort of weaving in worry and wonder. Ooh. And also sort of like for anxious parents, that you're not alone. We have a better future and we can write that better future. Right. So he really is like this amazing storyteller. And I like actually how he breaks out the book. So there's like, starts out with a letter to the future, and then it takes you on a journey from all over the world about how people are kind of resilient, or sort of concepts are resilient. And I just thought it was great. It's like one of those books, a little bit, you can pick it up and read the different chapters. And he kind of talks about like the things that we need from a physiological needs: air, temperature, water, food; safety needs, shelter, energy, society; love and esteem, connection and communication, right? Ooh. And then self-actualization, right? So it just was like a great read. It was sort of a celebration of the planet. And, I always like the idea of sort of a little bit of a meditation on what we can do, how we can be the inspiration to galvanize around nature. And I just thought like he had a very like, how can we be the best to just be the change and be more resilient? And so he has lots of great examples, and he's just a really wonderful storyteller. So I don't know. So it's sort of like travel book, adventure book, science book for kids, for parents seeking resources with kids. I really liked it. I was inspired. It's hopeful, and it just came out. So I highly recommend Life as We Know It Can Be by Bill Weir.
Now you inspired me. Now I'm going to have to, I think it's going to be my next book for myself. So thank you for your recommendation.
Okay, good.
That sounds awesome. Well, going in that's interesting, because I feel like this happens all the time. We pick our books separately and then we come back like, okay, this is, I know. We never talked about it beforehand. So we're like, this is always a surprise. So that's interesting what you just said, because my next book is brand new. It's coming out June 11th. So by the time this airs, it probably has just come out. Yep. So it's called The Connection Cure by Julia Holtz: The Prescriptive Power of Movement, Nature, Art, Service, and Belonging. And I fell in love with this book. I was so happy I got a galley of it to really check it out. And it's so very provocative and profound about like, how do we find time to really connect with what's important? We're like, oh yeah, that is what is important. It is about movement. It is about art. It's about dance. It's all these things that are innately human to us. So, and I love that she broke down these chapters that they say like the art prescription, the service prescription, the belonging prescription, the movement prescription. So all these things that really, she breaks it down very, very concisely, but it all makes like for us, you and I, we talk about this all the time. Like, yes, check off. And we love it, but it's really about like, how do we, because we are like at this breaking point of, being completely disconnected from ourselves and connected to, social media and all these things that are distracting us from what's really important, which is nature, art, human connection to one another, conversations, and creating space and place for ourselves to thrive, I think is really important. And she did a beautiful job of this. So it's a very easy read. It's lovely. It makes so much sense when you're kind of going through it. You're like, oh yeah, I get that. And even she goes to different places like Portugal, the Netherlands, and the European Union. It's an interesting read. And again, easy to read, but really highlights a lot of different places around the globe that are prescribing things that we talked about. And doctors and scientists are coming together saying we have to prescribe this more versus just medication. So I thought it was I'm glad this is coming out now. I think it's a very good time because it also taps into like how COVID really changed so much of our thinking. And that was like the good part of COVID. How do we create these, the modern malaise that we're facing? How do we counteract that with real human connection? So she did a great job. I really love this book.
We'll be right back after a quick break. Jennifer, guess what's coming up and where we get to hang out?
What's that, Monica?
The Biophilic Leadership Summit. It's back this March 24th through 26th.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see you in person again. It's been way too long.
I know, me too. And we invite all our listeners to come to this year's summit. we're going to be exploring biophilic placemaking and how we use biophilic principles to promote health, happiness, and vitality in public spaces.
Yes, and I was just reading over the schedule, which I'm very excited about. There are so many great speakers and panels. And when you get to join us, I'll be doing a nature walk and moderating a wonderful panel on activating community spaces with two incredible women, an architect and an urban planner.
So this summit is put on by the Biophilic Institute and Biophilic Cities Project. So you can also come meet all of the leading experts in biophilia. And in addition to all incredible multiple presentations, we're going to have all sorts of great farm-to-table meals, plus cocktails, some book signings, and lots of networking, which is always a favorite. And it's going to be at your and my favorite place, the Inn at Serenbe.
Yep, that's one of my favorite places, as you know. So join us in Serenbe for the 6th Annual Biophilic Leadership Summit from March 24th to March 26th, 2024.
And you can learn more about the summit and register today at biophilic.summit.com.
That's biophilic.summit.com. We hope to see you there.
We'll see you soon. Bye, Jen.
Bye.
Yeah, well, and we always talk about like we need the connection to people and to nature, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of the biophilia. But I think also, we get very overwhelmed with everything that's happening, even outside of climate, that just we get discouraged. And I think I'll speak for myself, you can feel that you're not doing anything if you're working on yourself and self-care is such an overused term, but you can do these things for yourself, right? Appreciate art and nature and movement. And if you can find your sort of center or meditation inside, you actually are going to be better to help the people outside. So I do believe that it is not selfish. I think it's really important. And I think more people in positions of power, especially, should be really considering the connections, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at the wrong things so much. And so it starts sometimes internally. And if we can find a good place internally, then we can help other people.
That's great. Like you even just said when you're talking about the other book, there's hope. So I think our theme is always around how do we find hope in all that we talk about, all that we say, and all that our actions are hopeful. So I feel like what you just said goes back to hope. We don't have to just throw everything away. It's focusing on things that really matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to focus on yourself.
Exactly.
All right. So that was Connection Cure.
Correct.
So now I'm going to share a book that goes a little more, but fun storytelling, but a little wonkier, specifically into plants. And it's called The Light Eaters, How the Unseen World of Plant Intelligence Offers a New Understanding on Life and Earth by Zoe, I think I'm saying that, Schlanger. Zoe is a staff reporter for The Atlantic and has also covered climate science for about 8 years. She also writes for New York Times, Bloomberg, Time, Newsweek. And she just really does a great job, sort of popular science. And I think one of the quotes on the reviews was, "You'll never look at your house plants or garden in quite the same way again." And so one of the debates, and this has been going on, is do plants have intelligence or a consciousness, right? And so that's a pretty, kind of wild concept. But what she argues is that plants have agency. And, they're the only thing that can make stuff out of nothing. Out of air and water and sunlight, they make sugar. And without plants, we wouldn't be here. They created the Earth's atmosphere, making it with oxygen and making it breathable for us and animals. And so everything that has passed by your brain, she says, has come through plants, right? And we tend to view plant life as this sort of indistinguishable mass of green, rather than the thousands and thousands of genetically separate and fragile individuals that are so different from each other, just as much as a fish and a lion are different from each other. But we just tend to think of it as this sort of we talk about this, it's this thing out there.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't really understand.
I don't know.
And so she really takes you on a journey to a ton of different places around the world, from Chile to the Pacific Northwest to Virginia to California to a Scottish farmhouse, like really wonderful storytelling, and talks about how plants do super cool things. Like, for instance, if they have a bug or something's attacking them, they can sense through their leaves, what's happening. And then they can put out airborne chemicals that will summon a predatory insect, like a wasp. So if like a caterpillar is eating their leaves, it will be able to recognize what kind of caterpillar it is from the saliva, I guess the saliva of whatever the chemical the caterpillar is exuding.
Wow.
And then they'll bring the predator wasp in to like attack the caterpillar, right? Or they'll send out chemicals to other species around them to communicate that there's a problem, that I'm being attacked by this caterpillar and you better like get your business together.
Get your business.
I didn't want to say a bad word. I would try to keep this clean. And so, it's like really fascinating. And so she interviews a ton of scientists and a lot of experiments that they're doing. And a lot of people think, plant intelligence is just folly. But a lot of them are like, no, I mean, they actually they're creative beings that are in constant motion, slow motion, and they're constantly probing the air and the soil for a livable future, right?
Wow.
And so even though we don't think of them that way, there's all these kind of gee whiz moments in the plant world. And so like, I'm trying to think of another example. I think there was a Peruvian plant that gets visited by pollinating bumblebees at certain times.
Wow.
But it remembers when the intervals of the visits, and then they prepare, I think they have starburst shaped flowers. They prepare their flowers in advance
for
the bumblebees, because they know when the bees generally come. And so they get their little flowers already. So the pollen is in a perfect, like ready for distribution, if you will.
That's so
cool. A little factory.
That's so cool.
So, right. And she's just, I watched a couple of interviews with her as well after reading the book, and she's just delightful. And so I just think it's a really fun book where she's, like a really big environmentalist and science reporter, but she's sort of bringing some groundbreaking popular science into this sort of hidden plant kingdom that we maybe it's like they say, like, I can't remember where I read it, but like if you liked the hidden life of trees, then you're going to love the light eaters.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I can do that.
Right? Because the light eaters, that's what they are. They eat light. Isn't that kind of fun to think about, that plants eat light and turn it into sugar?
I love that.
So
great book.
I'll repeat it. You'll never look at your houseplant the same way again. Watch out what it's thinking. You never know. There's some really cool stuff in here. I thought it was really fun.
That's so fun, because now, of course, it's gardening season, and I'm in my yard around the tent planting and potting and watering every day, and I love it. But now I'm going to have to think about, who are they?
Yeah, exactly.
Even my neighbor asked if I named all my plants. I'm like, oh, God, I haven't named them all yet, but I should.
Well, the funny thing in some of this is, like, there was a book out when we were like 3 years old, 1973. There was a book called The Secret Life of Plants that came out that they say was like some real science, but a lot of flimsy experiments and unscientific projection that kind of ruined the plant science, because that's when people said you have to talk to your plants and play music to your plants.
Yeah.
Remember that was like a big thing.
Yes.
They don't care. The plants don't care, is my understanding. They can feel vibrations, but they say that kind of took the plant science back many years. So anyway.
Okay.
I don't know.
Good to know.
The light eaters.
Okay. All right. So my next book is an interesting one. It is called Humanize by Thomas Heatherwick. I'm not sure. Have you ever heard about Thomas Heatherwick?
His name is really familiar. Yeah.
So interesting guy. So he has architectural and design practice called Heatherwick Studio since 1994. Mm-hmm. He can kind of also be, I don't want to say polarizing, but he can be very controversial in what he says and what he creates. So he's very well known for creating the Vessel in New York City.
Oh, that's why I know his name. Okay.
Yeah, so he is based in England, but he does work all over the world. But the book Humanize was really eye-opening to me. It's very easy read. I mean, there's like it's very, very short little pieces of like, oh, I never thought about this. Lots of photos, lots of imagery. Again, like super easy to read. I loved what he said. Actually, Anjan, our friend Anjan, Dr. Anjan Chatterjee from UPenn, shared this last year when he quoted Thomas Heatherwick saying, "We're facing the greatest blandemic in buildings." I was like, oh, blandemic.
Blandemic. I love that.
Blandemic of buildings and how that's impacting human health. And really, he talks like, how did we go from this beautiful architecture to these glass monstrosities all over the world and think that's okay when the human body and brain cannot compute these glass structures? It doesn't bode well for the body. We don't like it. And but instead of having neuroscientists hired for buildings, which I think they should be, they're just like putting up these glass. I mean, being in New York City, there's always another glass structure going up. You think, oh, come on, what? You know that's not good for you. So why are they building more and more? But it's a very eye-opening book, and again, so easy to read. He tends to be a little controversial at times because some people say, oh, I don't like his work only because he pushes boundaries, saying, why? Yep. Why are we building the way that we're building? We shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to. And if you're kind of sourcing locally, how can we create much more spaces that are harmonizing with that environment instead of just throwing structure? I mean, you go anywhere. I was just talking about this yesterday when I was in New Jersey, going to a local neighbor town. They put this glass monstrosity of a building on the boardwalk alongside the beach. And it doesn't belong there. So it doesn't even, you look at it, you're like, oh, that's such an eyesore because that's not what the beach is about. The specific town, more specifically, is more about like rock and roll history. And it's so deeply rooted in music. And you'd think you'd build a hotel or structure that kind of resembles or that would fit that environment. So I've learned a lot from Thomas Heatherwick, listening to and reading and watching some videos about him, because I got so interested in his work after I read this book and after Anjan spoke about him. I thought, wow, this is fascinating. And it really talks about like neuroaesthetics and how our spaces can make us well or unwell, and really very eye-opening. And again, super easy to read, but makes you think about how do we live in our spaces. So I really want to show Thomas Heatherwick my tent. Maybe he'll like that.
Oh, there you go. There you go. He's a brilliant.
Yeah.
I like it. He can come when he comes visit us, right?
Yes, exactly.
No, that's really interesting. We always talk about that at Serenbe, that the streetscape and the homes, just visually, even how the roofs work together or the distance between the sidewalk and the building, and right? It's just interesting when you walk down a street and have like diversity of architecture, good architecture. It does make you feel better.
Yeah, that's it. It makes you feel. You've got to feel something when you see it instead of like the blandemic. You're just like, another monstrosity of a glass building doesn't do anything for my soul. It's not soul giving or life giving. It's just bland.
Soul crushing.
And the blandness is and it's soul crushing. That's exactly it. It is so very soul crushing. So I'm hoping like books like Thomas Heatherwick's Humanize will help people really open their eyes and say, oh, we shouldn't live like this. We don't have to. Like, we need better.
Yeah, I'm going to find that book. I'm going to buy that book. That sounds great.
There's a great newsletter along with it. Like, it's
maybe we could have him on. I really want to have. I know I already had Nadia on, but I would love to have all of these authors on. When Katrina comes back, our producer comes back from maternity leave, she can call them all up for us. That would be so fun. Okay, so Thomas Heatherwick, Humanize. Okay, we need to get that one. We'll put all these in the show notes. Okay, so my last one is also, I think it sort of like goes nicely with my light eaters. We go from plants to birds. And this was kind of a fun discovery. It's called the Backyard Bird Chronicles. And half of what's fun about it is it's by Amy Tan, who I don't know if everybody out there remembers the Joy Luck Club or the Bone Setter's Daughters. Those are both of her novels. So this is Amy Tan going in a totally different direction. And it is a book, it's sort of a little bit of birding, a little bit of nature, a little bit of like beauty is hidden in plain sight. And what was also really cool about this is it's not only written by Amy Tan, it's illustrated by her. I had no idea. I had no idea that she was an illustrator. They're gorgeous drawings. So what happened was, I think it was in 2016, Amy Tan was just like overwhelmed with the world. I don't know what was happening. Misinformation, a lot of hate, social media was out of control. very divisive, right, in the country. And so she was searching for peace, and she turned towards nature, which we love. And what she did is she basically looked at the natural world out her window and specifically sort of fell in love with all the birds visiting her yard.
Oh,
and so she sort of used this as like, a way to find a moment of peace in this sort of chaotic time. Really became an ongoing connection to nature, to have a quiet moment, and then also start admiring these birds and starting to understand what they're doing, right? So it's just super cool. And it's more than just describing birds. It's like a sense of discovery through her observations and drawings, and just the deep connection she started having as a watcher and being watched. And she even kind of talks about how like the characters are almost like they have a little bit of characters like, she'll be like, it sees me, it's watching me now. So it's really a book about tracking the birds around her and really the passage of time through these daily entries, really beautiful questions and sketches that she's done. And if you like Amy Tan, she's an incredible writer. I would totally recommend reading this. I feel like birding is just become such a big thing. And
really
I felt like I noticed more birds, being home over during the pandemic. And so anyway, the Backyard Bird Chronicles is this just super fun, witty account of the things that are hiding in nature, how it hides in plain sight.
I think that's so great. That's because there are so many more birders, and I know we talked about this years ago during the pandemic. There's so many young people that are coming around to saying, oh, what is that sound? What is that bird? And it's this curiosity and wonder that nature provides us. Like, wow, we have this whole discovery, this whole world outside our window, like she says. And I think that's so neat because oftentimes we're like, oh, it's just whatever, but we're not listening and watching all the life right outside our windows, no matter where we are.
Yeah. And we actually have little barn swallows, I think they are, living in our back porch. They sit like in a little eave, and they've made their little nest, and we just kept it there because they'll keep coming. I think the generations keep coming back. And besides the fact that there's like poop all over the place, like we just live with it because they're so amazing to watch them go from little itty bitty, building the nest, little bitty eggs, to now there's like a little brood of little birds. And we sort of have a love affair with these little birds that come back every year. So maybe that was something about that, of just how the observations and then starting to understand all the species that came to visit her over time. So it's a really beautiful little book.
That's beautiful.
It's super cool. So I definitely recommend that one too. And that just came out this April as well. So I think everything, right? All of our books are brand new.
Yeah. The Humanize came out a little while ago, but other than that, I think Humanize may have come out either earlier this year, 2024.
Yeah.
But the other ones, Nadina's comes out now, and also the Connection Cure comes out now. So
nice.
Yeah.
Great.
I know. These are good books.
Yeah, I know. Great books. And one of the things I wanted to do, and I just didn't dig in, I just feel like I'm reading all these nonfictions, was to find a couple fictional books, that were more just fun storytelling that maybe wove nature in. So I'm still searching for those. I may put those out on another time, maybe for our holiday list. But yeah, so those are our 6 books. We'll put them all in the show notes, and we encourage you to pick one, if not all of them up, and just enjoy summer. It's going to be a beautiful one.
Enjoy summer. Take these books wherever you might be, on your front porch, back porch, beach, wherever, hiking, and just enjoy.
Yeah.
Just enjoy.
So thanks for listening. Shoot us a note if you have any questions, or if you picked one up, and if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye, Monica.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the podcast, we would love for you to follow us on our favorite listening app. Give us a 5-star rating, and please leave us a review.
Listens, follows, and reviews really go such a long way and help us share these amazing interviews and solutions for a wider network.
Absolutely. And we'll be back with another great guest in a few weeks.